All right, welcome back, and we are here. It's hard to believe we're at our last interview of the conference. So I have with me Mike Faulise. You're our closer, so high expectations here for the folks out there. Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about what TapQA is and how you started that company, and a little bit about your background for folks that haven't had a chance to meet you.
Sure. Well, I have an engineering background by schooling, but about 20 years ago I got into the consulting field in IT, and about 2008, 2009 decided that I wanted to recreate an organization that we started in load and performance testing, automation, very technical, and about that 2008, 2009 timeframe, recognized that with the recession that there was an opportunity for us to really start bringing jobs back from India and offshore, and really start doing that onshore within the Minneapolis area, and it's really just taken off like hotcakes, and it's been a great solution where we've really partnered with organizations, and by partnership it's really been a wonderful opportunity for organizations to not only get onshore talent, only be within a few time zones, understand contextual relevance, and then certainly have that ability to potentially even hire folks long term. So it's been a great different, unique solution than most consulting services organizations offer, and since then we've created over 500 jobs in the U.S., and it's been a great success story for the U.S. and for TapQA.
Wow. And with those 500 jobs, obviously you guys do a lot of hiring and staffing, and we talked to some folks that are running the Leadership Summit tomorrow, and one of the things they said is a hot topic always year over year is how do I find the right people? So like, how do I go get the right talent? And then how do I make sure that I'm giving them the right skills and that we've got relevant skills? So maybe talk a little bit about, as someone who's created 500 jobs, what you look for out there when you're looking for people to join your organization, what skills, the type of evaluation you do.
Yeah, one of the things for us, we found that the skills that people have definitely shifted, and I think we look at the quality skills. If we look at sort of the triangle of skills, not to get in the way of the Star East, we'll put the triangle over here again. So there's QA at the top of it, which we always have to have, and then there was really two other skills. There was the business silo, so whether you're finance or any type of business skill, and then technology. And we've always really seen traditionally that we want QA and some type of a finance, insurance, whatever that might be, media, whatnot. And what we've seen now in the last 5 years is we've started to see that pendulum swing where we really want more technology focus. And I think we're starting to see with whether that's continuous integration or DevOps and Agile and a lot of these new fundamental shifts in technology that have been occurring now for the last 8 to 9 years, where the tester and the developer are starting to look more similar. And because of that, that's now where we're seeing much more of a technology. So that's in someone that maybe has, say, 5 or 10 years of experience, certainly looking at some of those more technical skills. That being said, we hire a lot of entry level, we hire a lot of associate levels, and what we're looking for, people that are outside that natural strike zone in the IT. So things that normally we would hire for MIS and engineers, we're actually now looking a little outside of that and looking for folks that may have more of a musical background. And that musical background allows people to be very creative and analytical, and that's a strike zone for a good QA tester. Right. So, and that's allowed us to really be competitive with offshoring, but yet also really develop talent within people.
And in terms of the clients you're working with, then have you seen any trends? We've heard a lot at this conference about DevOps and Agile and CI and all the things that people are focused on, and you guys obviously are in the vendor area, which you guys can virtually visit, where there's lots of tools and technologies and things like that. What are you seeing as an owner of an organization for services around trends and what companies are buying and wanting and struggling with or needing help with?
I think the first trend that I think is interesting to me is just the idea that open source tools are certainly becoming more acceptable. So we're seeing companies that are certainly doing more open source, and there's certainly places for other tools, whether those be automation tools or build management or whatever they might be. But that's certainly a trend that we're seeing more and more of with organizations that are actually adapting and integrating more open source tools. I think some of the trends that we're seeing is just the idea that we are spending more on quality. quality today than we've ever have before.
Yeah.
With the advent of development always being ahead of testing, testing mobile, testing the different whether it's different browsers or different mobile browsers or Internet of Things. There's just a lot more we have to test now, and so because of that, organizations are spending more on quality, and that's been great.
Yeah.
Certainly great for our organization, and I think great
Right.
for anyone in the QA industry, which is a great thing for us long term. But that then means that with that comes challenges, and how do you create those centers of excellence, and what do you do if you've got extra budget? How can you leverage that the best? But those are some of the trends and things that we're seeing organizationally.
Yeah. And how would you say, so there may be folks out there who are saying, I know I don't have capacity inside my organization. I want to engage a partner to help me in certain areas. I want someone to come in and help my organization. What is a good way for them to know or evaluate, is this going to be a good partner for me? Is this the right thing to not do internally, but to have an external person to help me with?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that we find with our partner, or when you do look to partner with someone, and we've partnered with a lot of organizations, is first and foremost define what partnership means.
Right.
And I think what traditionally what that's meant in the past is I'm a service organization, you pay me money, I give you service,
Right.
and that's great. But I think what we really want to do, and what we've certainly done at TapQA, is to help organizations define what partnership means. And first and foremost, our goal is to help organizations really drive their cost of quality below their employee costs, so they use us and see value in using us and see that velocity and the value, but yet know it's not as expensive as hiring someone full time. And if we can't do that as a partner, then we should allow folks to hire our folks.
Right.
And so those are to me two key elements that you want to be able to scale, but you also want to know, can I rely on this partner to internalize and create FTE positions for my organization, as well as can I scale? And those are to me two fundamental pieces of a good partnership.
Yep, absolutely. Interesting, because you don't hear a lot of times, I think, in the services industry, or people may not be aware of it, that you do allow, as an organization, you guys allow them to actually hire those people on, like you said. So, they can become employees of the organization, so while they're doing the training, they don't lose that knowledge.
Yeah, that knowledge then becomes part of the organization. And we at TapQA, I think, just as a fundamental mission, our goal and our thought has been, if you are hiring people, you're going to have more emphasis on quality, and there will be more opportunities to continue to partner.
Right. And also, being that you guys are solely focused on testing and QA, it seems like you're continuing to grow as well. So what's your perspective on, people may not know there's companies that all they do is testing and quality, and that there's a market for that, and there's a place for that, and that there's a lot of demand for that, for example. So maybe talk to, what it's like to be a company that has such a refined focus in one area.
Yeah, having that micro focus has been incredibly useful, because what we can do that not a lot of other consulting services do is to actually create a career path for every one of our staff.
Yeah.
So every employee, whether they come in at an associate level or a senior level, there's a path. And I think that micro focus that we have has been wonderful and allowed us to grow, so that we are not all things to everyone. We are one thing, and then we do very well for everyone.
Right. We focus on this.
Yeah.
And I think that's great as a consumer, because myself, having been on the consumer side, struggled with finding a partner who understood what my challenges were as the buyer, and what I needed. And so having an organization that focuses so micro-focus on that area is helpful. For folks out there that may be saying, we talked to someone earlier, she recently made a shift from a full-time employee to a consultant, so going the other way. Instead of being a consultant and becoming an employee, she had shifted into consulting. Any words of wisdom or advice for folks out there who are sitting out there thinking, gosh, this consulting thing sounds interesting, how do I get involved in that, or maybe shift into that, or some things to know when you're going from being an FTE to more of a consultant model?
Sure. First, I'm going to have to just make a small correction. It's not interesting. It is fabulous. Let's use the right adjective to really modify the consulting career. Yeah. It's fantastic. It's fabulous. It's the best thing since sliced bread. But don't leave your full-time job yet. So, I think there's some things that you have to be aware of when you are a consultant. I think that the number one thing that I talk to people about is, if you're going to be a consultant and you're going to go on site somewhere where you're on site and not, say, working remote or out of another facility, is psychologically the first thing you really have to be prepared for is the idea of visitor parking. and that
Yeah.
when you go to a doctor, you park in visitor parking because you know you're not going to be there forever, you hope,
Yeah.
and that then you know that you're eventually going to leave. And so I think there's some things that you do. You're a little more respectful. You make sure if you got to take your shoes off, you take your shoes off. So you do things that a visitor would do. And I think as a consultant, that's that mentality to be successful that you have to have.
Mm-hmm.
And where it's that the idea that this is not my home, so I have to really make sure that I'm treating it with the utmost respect. And I think that's when people get into consulting, I think that sometimes get overlooked.
Yeah.
Because certainly a lot of people can do the job and do the work,
Right.
but it is making sure that you do the job and you do the work, and people are appreciative of what you do. So.
Right. Well, and I think you bring up a good point, and something else I think we've seen when you shift into that consulting model is, you have to be careful about staying out of some of the politics and into the fray of the organization, because there's a lot that goes on, but maybe speak a little bit to, as a consultant, how to manage the messaging of sometimes delivering good news or bad news, if you have any thoughts on that for people that are getting into that consulting world.
Yeah.
And
when you're in the consulting world, it's always good news. That's the number one thing, even when it's bad. But
Right.
I think when you're smiling, I
Yeah.
think that, to me, it's that upbeat positivity. I think that, instead of saying that it is, that we have hurdles and obstacles, we have challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And, words have meaning, and
Yep.
are very meaningful to organizations. So I think, how you portray things, and then making sure that you have solutions around those challenge areas.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, we've got a challenge here, here's an opportunity, and here's some options that we can go down. You won't ever be necessarily the decision maker at organizations, but giving organizations the options and understanding that, hey, you've already thought through, what the paths that we can take. These are critical things to be successful as a consultant, and to continue to see yourself as having that added value than they didn't just do something and then suddenly there's a critical defect, but now we know a path to how to solve it. These are critical things. Sometimes as QA, we don't know how to solve those things, but that's when you can spend the extra time to work with the developer to find out, what is that time commitment, what is that option, so that instead of just saying, I don't know, and
Right.
throwing your hands up,
Right.
that you can actually throw some options out there. And that, I think at TAP QA, one of the things that we've done is making sure that everyone at our organization, whether they're an associate or they're a senior, knows kind of what our solutions are to help with organizations in that. So that's where we have kind of our nearshore solution, we have our strategic solution, and then we have our technology solution. So usually in the world of IT, things are solved with either people, process, or technology.
Right.
And so on the strategic side, that's where we look at resourcing, we look at structure, we look at centralization, decentralization, and resources. With technology, we look at the different tools and how to layer them correctly. And then with from just a sourcing perspective, that's where we have that scaling solution with nearshore and how we do TAP QA. So those are great opportunities, for us, for a TAP QA consultant, so that they understand, hey, if I do run into a struggle, if I do run into challenges, how do I present some solutions that might be very beneficial for the client?
one last thought, because time goes so quickly. One last thing I wanted to ask you about, because we've heard a little bit about it at the conference, and obviously as someone who hires people, you're hiring some of these millennials, as they call them. So would love your thoughts on how do you help manage these millennials in your workforce? Because you obviously, I'm sure, have some of them.
We do. And I think that the answer is, they're not a lot of different than other generations. I'm part of Generation X, and I think as generations change, there are similarities and there are differences. I think that every generation says, when I was your age, we had, right?
Right.
So,
right.
I guess, my grandparents said that they walked uphill both ways.
Right.
Now we say things like we used to bang a TV. But I think the one thing that, to make it work, sorry, for those of you that don't know, we used to bang a TV to make it work better.
And it would sometimes help.
And it would sometimes help. So nowadays we don't do that. But, I think these days one of the things that we do help with when it comes to managing, the next generation of our workforce is that they have not had a lot of learning opportunities through failure. So with Google being ever present in their life and the internet being ever present in their life, learning has been easier for them. It's at least maybe not easier, but certainly they haven't had to learn through failure.
Yeah.
So we've managed to really to retain our millennials, to challenge them, is to give them problems that are not quickly solvable. Something that you can't just Google. And I think that has been such a great thing for managers and folks that are managing that talent pool to understand that give those challenges to people because they thrive on that. And then I think one other thing to add is this is also a very competitive generation. There's lots of visibility as to whether you succeed or fail. And I think that allowing people to fail and trying to remove some of that competitiveness, but yet continuing to put the challenges in front of them is what really has created a successful environment for millennials.
That's great. Thanks for sharing all of that. Mike, if people want to know more or get a hold of you, what's the best way to find you?
Best way to find me is on the internet, the good place, and that's tapqa.com. And then just go to the leadership page, and my information is there. Otherwise, info@tapqa.com, and we'll get it. So.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah,
thanks everyone
Jennifer.
for tuning in and watching our interviews, and we hope to see you all back for the keynote coming up next.